Hi, this is Ryan calling from Stone Oak area, San Antonio. I just want to say that, this guy is hands down one of San Antonio's best players we've ever had. He, of course, I think, in my opinion, his classic signature free throw turnaround, that's just a classic move. I think it changed the game forever. I think that we're going to definitely miss him as a city, and I hope he somehow gets involved with the Spurs Association. That would really be great for the city, and I think that I just want to thank him for everything he's done for the city.
Yo, man, I'm just calling about Tim Duncan, man. I just have the news that Tim Duncan is retired, man. I just have a lot of admiration for the guy, for all that he's done for the basketball game. Yeah, I just wanted to give all my shout out, man. Yeah, thanks to the greatest of all time, man, for all the memories that he's shown us through all the time. All right, peace out, man. Thank you.
Tim Duncan, we love you so much. Thank you for making this the best 19 years San Antonio's ever seen. Thank you for putting us on the map. You're all I know. Being only 22 years old, I've grown up with you. Thank you for all that you've done. We love you, Timmy.
Well, and welcome to the Go Spurs Go Memes podcast, live but recorded from the Go Spurs Go Memes Network studio. I am your host, Ray, in studio with me today, Buddy and Frank. Gentlemen, the big news of the week, as of course everybody, the whole world is aware of now,
Pokemon
Go has basically taken over the entire country, the entire world. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. I'm addicted. I think you guys are addicted. As a matter of fact, before I got here, you guys were out hunting Pokemon.
We were.
Today, I actually read that it's actually bigger than Facebook. And more people have Pokemon Go on their phones than they actually do Tinder. So how crazy is that? That Pokemon Go is actually outbeating Tinder. It's insane.
It's stupid. It is absolutely stupid. When you describe it to people and people are like, well, what do you gain? Absolutely nothing.
But what do you gain from a game? I mean, when you really think about it, what do you gain from a game? Other than just entertainment and stupidity.
But, I mean, the reason why it's so successful.
Here's a funny thing, too, is let's kind of talk about this because it was actually last week when we were recording that young Butterd here actually showed us the Pokemon Go because he actually hacked into his phone, got the beta version, and was playing it before everyone else. And, he showed it to me and Frank, and I think he was actually about to catch a Poliwhirl, if I'm not mistaken, is what it was.
Poliwag.
Okay, Poliwag. And Frank and I were just making fun of him because we just thought it was stupid, and we were like, whatever.
It was.
And I kid you not, the next day I downloaded it, and I've been addicted since. And then I think a couple of days later, Frank sent us a message basically saying F you, and he was downloading it.
The downloading symbol.
With the downloading symbol.
It was inevitable. Absolutely. I mean, I knew I would succumb. I mean, it was just a matter of time. But
yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I know Nintendo gained like $1.5 billion in revenue because of this.
Their
stock just shot up. I mean, this is crazy. And they don't even own the Pokemon brand. They own the majority stake in it, but the whole thing isn't theirs. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's just absolutely insane. Anyways, I'm sure we'll have many more Pokemon Go updates as we go on.
We understand there's a lot of haters out there.
Oh, we know.
And I agree with every single one of them.
It doesn't mean I'm going to stop.
It doesn't mean I'm going to stop
Not
exactly.
at all.
Anyways, in little news that happened this week, I guess the announcement was finally official. Tim Duncan has retired, 19 years in the silver and black, and he is done. He is out. And the reason why? Because it wasn't fun for him anymore.
Yeah. And well, didn't Popovich kind of predict that? I mean, years and years ago, like when his time would come, he just said you would just see it in his eyes when you just give it your all and it's not enough. And,
right.
But the other thing that he said soon afterwards, he was like, And I feel that'll happen to me soon after.
Exactly. And I think that was one of the biggest questions that I got on Go Spurs Go memes was, did I feel if Pop was going to announce his retirement? Because, of course, I think it was yesterday, Pop had a press conference about this whole thing without Timmy, because, of course, that's not Timmy's way. It's not for him to talk or anything. And Tim actually did an interview where he's from,
to a podcast
something like that down in the Virgin Islands. That's where he actually kind of talked a little bit about it, saying, how much he loved the city, but it just wasn't fun for him anymore, and that's when he knew it was time to kind of hang him up. But yeah, I never once felt that Popovich would come out himself and say, I'm ready to retire, because of course we all know he did make a commitment to LaMarcus Aldridge to at least be here for the full length of Aldridge's contract. So I don't see Pop retiring anytime soon. But I put up the phone number 848-GO-SPURS. People started calling in. We did put up some of the voicemails at the beginning of the podcast, and maybe Frank will throw some in later. I don't know. We'll see. But we did get an amazing feedback from that, because of course, he touched so many people here in San Antonio, and I think we actually had one voicemail where this nice lady just basically said, I'm 22 years old, and he's the only, Spur that I've always known. And so that really puts it into perspective how long he's been here in a Spurs uniform.
So let's talk about the class act that this guy is.
Yep.
Right? So today he puts out a letter today, right? And it's his final letter to the fans of basically San Antonio. And so I'll read the letter what he wrote. It's real short.
Sure.
So he asked, if asked to write a script for my career 19 years ago, there's no way that I would have been able to dream up this journey. I'm sure he did. I stand here at the end of this ride and look back in awe of what I've experienced. The wins and losses will be remembered, but what I'll remember most are the people. The fans inside the arena and out, the staff and coaches who pushed me and held me together, the teammates and even opponents who will be lifelong friends, sharing my ups and downs with family and close friends, and most importantly, the snapshot of my kids growing up and reveling in watching Dad work. That is what I will cherish most. Thank you to the city of San Antonio for the love and support over these years. Thank you to all the fans over the world. Much love always, Tim.
And how, that letter right there is just basically Duncan.
Absolutely. The fact that it's a letter. There's no press conference.
It's a letter.
There's no farewell tour. Look at the two people who've retired right here. Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan both went out the way you would say, that's how
the way they would have went out.
Yeah,
I agree. And there's never going to be anybody like Tim Duncan ever.
Never. We are in the age of where the athlete will bounce around from city to city to make the money that they want. We're not going to have that anymore, where a player will actually stay with the team that drafted them. I think if a player does stay with the team that drafted them, it's going to kind of be a one-off, really. Yeah. We're basically, in the era of you go after the money, you go after what you want. It's okay to be selfish, do what you want.
It's the equivalent of, the NBA is equivalent to one and done now. But think about it. You've got LeBron James, Chris Bosh, even a lot of other players. It's slipping my mind. Howard. You're talking
Howard.
about just journeymen now, and these are like franchise players. And the way of Tim, the way of Kobe, the way of David Robinson, Karl Malone. Well, for the most part, Karl Malone. John Stockton, Hornacek, and I mentioned everybody from Utah.
Probably because you were looking at a picture of Utah.
You forgot Mark Eaton.
These were fixtures in the history of the NBA, and along with those fixtures came the towns that they came from. Like I said, you think about David Robinson, you think the Spurs.
Right.
You think about Kobe Bryant, you're going to think the Lakers. When you think about Dwight Howard. Let's be honest. He's not going to be like,
no.
He's not going to be a Tim Duncan or anything like. But a Reggie Miller. You always see him in the iconic uniform,
right,
and in that context of which they played against the Knicks or anything. It was team against team.
And I want to say, back then, it was kind of a forbidden thing. Like, when you were fortunate enough to get into the NBA and be drafted by a certain team, you basically gave that franchise your all. And that's why most people, like you said, the Reggie Miller in the Indiana uniform, the Patrick Ewing in his Knicks uniform. Yeah. And then I think we finally started getting that change around where players would actually leave teams. It started with Charles Barkley, which we talked about last week. When he went to Phoenix, he was looking at, being able to win a championship. He ran into a team called the Chicago Bulls, and they had this guard named Michael Jordan that just wasn't going to let anybody else win at the time. But, it kind of starts there. And then I think it progressively got worse when LeBron James left Cleveland. It was all about the decision. Went to Miami, and then decision part 2, he went back. And then again this summer with Kevin Durant deciding to go to Golden State. And I'm telling you right now, next year we're going to see this again because I'm telling you right now, Russell Westbrook is going to leave Oklahoma City, and it's gonna be a huge thing. I mean, even today on the news wires, they were basically saying that all these rival NBA execs are saying Westbrook is done in Oklahoma City. He is leaving next year. And I mean, we had been saying that for a while. Like, if you don't understand the type of person and player that Westbrook is, he's thinking, one, I'm going to get my money, and two, why would I want to stay in Oklahoma City when I can go to a major team like the Lakers, like the Knicks, where there's a huge media following, and I'm going to get my money, and I'm going to get my fame. Mm-hmm. And he's right. He's such the caliber of a player that could be the NBA's MVP. And I think that if he was in a bigger market, I mean, he's just going to get way more attention.
Well, I mean, with the markets, with the television deal coming up, I mean, it's going to get ridiculously stupid. You're going to see people signing for ridiculous amounts. You thought this year was bad.
Oh, no, next year will be worse. And then it progressively gets worse the next 5 years. Like,
because they're making more money.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's
it's insane.
That's the thing about all of this is that a lot of it is an endemic of the problem of how the money is working now. So before it was because the salary cap wasn't what it was today.
Right. No, it's nowhere near.
Collective bargaining, all of that stuff wasn't what it is today. So these players are seeing that the owners are making insane amount of money from these games.
And I'm glad you brought that up, buddy, because I always like to reiterate that to people is that, yes, these players are getting these crazy contracts, but the owners are still getting 51% of all those revenues. Only 49% of that is going to all the NBA players. So when you really look at that and you look at how many owners there are and how many NBA players there are, think about how much money these owners are getting. They're banking right now.
It also tells you the health of the league. I mean, they're here to stay.
Yes.
I mean,
good point, Frank.
I mean, these three franchises. I mean, let's talk about the three leagues. The main ones. Hockey doesn't count. You have NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball.
You just upset
right now.
all our Canadian fans.
I love Canadians. But I mean, it just tells you like now how soon before it's up for the running. Because honestly, when you consider it in terms of rank, NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and NBA, is it approaching the type of fanfare that you would have with the NFL? Because it seems like it's getting close.
The NFL makes stupid money, and I kind of feel like their players are basically screwed by their collective bargaining agreement.
Well, they also have a lot more players.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they don't make as much because of the fact that there's less of them. I mean, there's more of them in that thing. But I mean, that's the thing. I mean, so there's no coincidence that the players and their agents, of course, want to go out and try to chase that money from these teams, and they should. I mean, they're only going to have a shelf life of at most, if you're lucky, 15 years. If you're lucky, 15.
If you're lucky, yep.
And then if you're not so lucky, 8 to 9 years, to where they're doing what they're basically born to do. That's what I mean. They've grown up in this system to make 8 or 9 years of their life and make all that money. And then the rest of it, well, they got to just hang on. And hopefully, they just keep the money.
Yeah, and that's a good thing too, because
unlike Antoine Walker,
I kind of feel like in the NFL, those guys give so much; they're really taking years off their life.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think that's a very valid statement to say is that when you're in the NFL, you may have a short career. You may not last 5 years. I mean,
what is the average now? Because back then the average was like 3 years.
Damn it! That's when we need Jack.
I know we miss him.
Stupid summer and no classes.
That's what you get for not hiring him again.
Maybe I should take another intern on. Maybe we should. If anybody that's listening to this podcast,
Jack, don't hear this.
Would like to be an intern, shoot us an email, GoSpursGoMemes@gmail.com, and maybe we'll look into that. Let's see what happens.
We're gonna get quite a bit for that one.
Anyways, what I did want to do is a lot of NBA players and legends came out and kind of made a statement about the whole Tim Duncan thing, and I just wanted to kind of do a couple of the ones that were said. So first off, LeBron James, Timmy D, you know how I feel about you, what you did for me and for the entire NBA. Thank you for an amazing career. Chris Paul, I looked up to you as a kid, as a young man, and even more so now as a man. Why do I just see him crying saying that? Is that just me? Like, I just see him like, Timmy, I love you.
The man probably cries during sex.
Probably.
Wow.
Shaq said the greatest power forward ever, unbreakable power forward. Of course, the great David Robinson. Congrats, Timmy. It was my honor to have been the other tower. You amazed us all.
I like how he says the other tower.
The other tower, right? Yeah.
I was like, really?
And then the last one I'll say is Dirk Nowitzki. He said, he was always about winning, never about making a brand out of himself. That's what I appreciate the most.
I like the one that Jason Kidd said.
What did Jason Kidd say?
Quote, on my flight home, I think I got cold feet. And sometimes I have nightmares about that. I could have won a company championships over there.
Don't think so.
I don't think so. I actually think if Jason Kidd comes here, we probably don't win as many titles because we probably would have gotten rid of Tony Parker.
That's a good point.
Just the way that I look at it. But what else, guys? What else about, this whole Tim Duncan retirement? I was really surprised by the response that we were getting on Go Spurs Go memes. So first off, I want to say thank you to our fans because the day that Tim Duncan retired, we actually surpassed 21,000 likes on Facebook, which completely blows my mind. But I really felt that was an honor to Tim that we hit 21 on the day that Duncan retired. But we did have a variety of responses from people. Some people were really sad. Some people were really upset. Like they really took it personally, like Tim had done something to them. I always do my best to respond to every comment that's on Go Spurs Go memes. And I was telling some people, it's not about you. It's not about me. This is about Tim. And this is what he wants. This is what's about him and his family. And instead of being upset that we don't get one more year, why don't you just bask and enjoy the 19 years that we had? Because we're probably never going to see something like that again.
Well, it's like that one quote that I've heard before where I wish I can name who said it, but it's like, don't be depressed that it's over. Be happy that it happened.
Right.
Because, and I'll tell you a story that Buddy and I, back then. This is the thing about Tim Duncan is that we're almost the same age. So like when his career started, we were coming of age as well.
Right.
And then here we are. You start realizing, wow, we're old. And, but I remember one time, Buddy and I, we actually went to a Spurs game back on that season when they won 25 wins.
Oh yeah,
so
Dominique Wilkins.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
Right.
And,
yeah.
And we were there.
Pacers.
And yeah, exactly.
And we got hammered.
and Buddy goes, "Don't worry about this. Don't worry about this. Because watch, they're terrible right now. They're going to get a top draft pick, and it's going to change the way the Spurs are going to be." And sure enough, Tim Duncan comes up for the draft. Spurs get number 1. Obviously, they draft him. And the cool thing about this, in these past 19 years, I've been experiencing it with Buddy here because we saw the first finals, and none of that could have happened without Tim Duncan. And I think people hold that to themselves, as a city, almost like they've taken him in as a brother, as an icon.
Oh, definitely.
Much like a mayor, much like a politician. Well, I don't want to say a politician, but someone who's just you can make a statue of, and everybody's going to respect and understand that.
Right. And I think that's a really good point because that was another big response from people on Go Spurs Go memes was saying, okay, he's retired. When is the statue going up?
Yep.
It has to happen.
It has to happen.
Like Jordan. It
has to happen in front of the AT&T Center. It needs to be that statue. And my vote is for a statue of Timmy hugging the ball. That legendary image of him at the beginning of every game with him hugging that ball. That's what that statue needs to be.
I could get commissioned.
So here's the thing too. Understand that Tim Duncan leaving now at this point in his career is perfect. Granted, we wanted to see him go out on the championship, right?
Right.
I mean, we all agree on this, right? But he went out a winner. We came out of one of the best regular season the Spurs have ever had, right? He had a fantastic season for the age that he was, and he's still very effective. Even though we all knew that he was littler Duncan at this point, right? We knew that he was still effective at this point, but you don't want to see things like what we were seeing, when people were too old and they shouldn't have been playing anymore. Like Jordan, we'll take Jordan for an example. The people who everybody holds up in this high regard. When Jordan was with the Wizards, he was a shell of himself.
Yeah, he really was.
He was awful, and he just could not get it through his head that he should have just pulled it up at this point.
You don't want to see a superstar come out from the bench,
no,
because that's
what was going to happen.
It's like Sinatra forgetting his lyrics in his old age. It happened.
It's kind of like Wayne Newton now. Anyways, but I think for me the big thing was that, I'll always remember the final game against Oklahoma City when we lost. And, Timmy just kind of gave a look around the court. The entire Oklahoma City Thunder fans gave him a standing ovation, and he walked out on his own. And I think that's a key to really how you should look at this is because he walked out on his own. He plays another year, another 2 years because we're selfish and that's what we want. He may not walk out on his own.
Yeah.
He may have to be carried out.
Yeah, imagine him blowing out his knees. And then what
Exactly,
happens?
and
the
you know
first
the
thing I think
knees
about.
exactly is the knees, and so that's why I just kind of tell everybody we should celebrate what we had with him because you're never going to see that again.
Well, we've never experienced this before.
No,
I mean,
no.
David Robinson was totally
I'm so
different.
glad you brought this
Okay.
up. I'm so glad you brought this up because that was my next thing is that now we have some people saying like, well, why didn't we do this for David Robinson? It's not the same.
No.
It's so not the same.
I mean, he was great, but
he
he
was
is
great.
not what he was.
He's not.
He's
I'm
not the
sorry. Yeah.
impact.
If Tim Duncan is not in San Antonio, we do
don't
not
have a
win
franchise.
championships. No, we don't.
At
We
all.
do not have a franchise at all. And so I think it's completely different for Tim Duncan than what we did for when David Robinson retired. And mind you, Robinson kind of retired young too.
Well, he also
Yeah.
retired on top too.
Right.
But
Yeah.
here's the other thing too: is when we're talking about this, I mean, we've never experienced this before. But like David Robinson is in a different realm. He established everything to get where we are. But at the same time, Duncan still at the end of Robinson's tenure, at his time. Duncan still won 3 more championships.
Right.
And that
Which
is
proved
a
that
test.
it wasn't Robinson's
It wasn't
help
Robinson,
that he needed.
yeah.
But and Popovich, framed this, really, really well in saying that without a Duncan, there's not a me, there's not a franchise, there is not a Danny Green, a Boris Diaw, a Red Rocket, and just think about all these names.
Richard Jefferson.
that
Richard
because
Jefferson.
of
Dewan
Tim
Blair.
Duncan being there.
David
now,
West.
he couldn't win it on his own, but it just tells you what type of leadership that he had. Just kind of. Leading from the bus, it's not what you see on TV. It's what you see in the huddle. It's what you see on the route during the rodeo road trip. How to get people together, and it's one thing that I don't know if we ever see it again because that time of the franchise players staying where they are with their
Right. That's
initial
over.
franchise, it's gone. And we may have to prepare ourselves for rather a lot of famine or maybe a year or two of a huge feast again, and then that's it. And then we go, just ups and downs. Like
Right.
I think culture has a lot to do with it too. Like I can see the Spurs cultivating another player, not to the caliber of Tim, but somebody who sticks with the franchise for a long time. Now Aldridge, I don't know if he's going to be that guy.
No.
However, I can see somebody in the future being that guy for even a team like us because our culture is so much different from other cultures. For instance, everybody was saying that the Miami Heat were this culture, right?
Yeah, no.
They were saying, "Oh, it's family, Heat
It's fa-
Nation."
yeah,
and all
yeah,
that stuff.
whatever.
Yeah, that's funny how that all worked. That's funny how that all worked out with Dwayne Wade, didn't it? Right?
come on, you're Miami fans. You guys aren't showing up for the games until the third quarter.
Yeah, I mean,
it
and-
really is.
And what's
the type
funny
of
is that
culture.
we saw that and we looked at it, and I bet all 3 of us looked at it and we're like, yeah, that just makes total sense that would happen. It was going to happen last year,
Right.
And somehow or another, he eked another $20 million out of them. But they did wanted to get rid of him since last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
They weren't going to match last year, but they knew that they could have a chance with having Whiteside and having Bosch there. They didn't anticipate Bosch going down, right? So this year, they know Bosch is not going to come back. They want to go into a rebuilding mode, and they're like, you know what? This is time to cut ties with Dwayne Wade. We're just
And
gonna let him do
that's
it.
exactly what they did.
Would that have happened here in town with us, with somebody like him?
No,
Not in a million
because I
years.
actually think that our franchise is more set up to we can have a sucky year because we're loyal and we'll keep the same guys. Like Manu Ginobili, who is probably going to get a huge increase, even though it's probably time for him to hang it up as well.
You can't blame him.
He's going to be carried off the off the court.
Dude,
He's probably going to be, and he's
Don't
playing in
lose
the
another
Olympics.
testicle.
Like that's the thing too. Is like he's playing in
And
the
Parker.
Olympics this year. Tony's doing the same thing. I mean, it's awesome that you want to do that for your nation and everything, but God, guys, like you're just
I
your
just don't
body can't
understand
take it
I
anymore.
just don't understand that at all.
But you know why? It's because you're not a professional athlete, and that's all that they breathe and eat is the game, and I think that's why. I think that's exactly why it's hard for some people to see. It's the competition.
Well, when you're doing it, how do you stop? It's like if we say,
what do you do with yourself afterwards?
Get rid of our phones and stop playing Pokemon.
Oh, we'd
What is
die.
left for us?
Well, I mean, but they can go into coaching,
We'd be
things like
stuck with
that. They could
Independence
Day. We'll talk about that soon.
Well, yeah,
by the
we'll
way.
talk about that soon.
But what do they do? Now, here's an interesting theory for you guys. Okay, so where does Duncan go from now? Right? When we can go now with this, or we can go later with this. Do you want to say?
No,
where?
do it now. Why not?
I have a theory.
Okay.
So check this out. Okay, you hate my theories. Okay, so we know that Duncan's.
Illuminati.
This is, no. This is a simple. This is a real simple theory. Actually, this is
okay.
a real simple one. Right? He's been taking discounts for years. Right? So this year comes around, we can't afford him. Right? We know we can't. We can, but then we can't.
we could afford them,
But it would have been
just
made difficult.
It would have been kind of difficult, but we could have done it.
So What if they tell him, look,
Boban.
oh man, don't even tell me about that. Anyways, so what if we tell them, look, Tim, we know you want to be part of this franchise, and we know that you want to still compete and do things, right? But let's just be honest with you. One, how much more effective are you going to really be, and do you really, really like doing this? And they know his personality,
Right.
Number two, what if we gave you an ownership stake in the team if you retire now? And what if they told him this years ago, like 5-6 years ago, when he was taking this discounts already, and they told him, when you retire, that ownership stake is yours and you get to keep it. Robinson has an ownership stake in the team right now. What if that was always the end game for him in the first place?
Technically, he has those rings too. So go ahead. Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, to me, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm thinking this is one of the bigger reasons why he might have done it now, because he doesn't lose one way or the other. You know what I mean? That's what
Yeah, I mean, he was going to get his money anyways, whether he came back and played or he just retired. Spurs were going to pay him out. But the advantage is that the Spurs can actually spread out what we actually owe him now. So it's actually going to help our salary cap situation. So now the Spurs are only going to take a $1.9 million hit for the next 3 seasons. So that's kind of the advantage there. So the Spurs have a little bit more wiggle room. But I'm still upset about the whole Ginobili thing because I know he's going to get a raise.
We're really hurt. What, $10 million, right? We're hearing?
North of $10 million.
Oh my God, that's
So
crazy.
one thing I do want to bring up, and I kind of want to get you guys' feedback about this, because I've mentioned to this, I've talked to this before, and so I kind of want to talk about it again. So as we know, when it comes to free agency, rumors go crazy, and everyone with the social media account will start just going nuts with trying to break news. And I always laugh because everyone always basically will make a tweet and be like, sources.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is they get that from professional journalists that actually do the same thing. Like, but they have legitimate sources that are giving them this information, and that's what makes them amazing journalists.
Well, it's also the practice of it. I mean, real journalists, they look for 3 verifications before they actually report it. If you do 2, maybe you can get it. But if it's one
you
you're
don't
a rag,
ever,
you're the
you
New
don't
York Post
ever do it.
at that
Exactly.
point.
You don't ever do it. You need at least 2 sources to confirm it before you actually go out there. Okay. So basically what happens during free agency is that everybody feels that they're there to break news. So what happens is people will start making fake accounts, trying to copy other people. And then they just start dropping news bits, and things like that. And it's all a bunch of lies. And it really is just to get a reaction on something.
Hits.
Exactly. And what I find really funny is, because I mentioned before, is that there are local newscasters that hate that type of journalism, because I like to think that they hate it because in a way they're very jealous, because they work here in San Antonio and they don't get the info first, as opposed to people that are actually outside of the city. They have sources here in town that actually feed things to them. And so they're breaking the news first. And so I always laugh because basically what happened last week is the news kind of leaked that the Duncan announcement was going to come on Friday. I had heard that. I know some other people that I trust had heard the same thing. And there is a guy that works for Basketball Insiders that actually did a tweet about it. And he put on there, I'm hearing rumblings. Friday, we're going to hear the announcement from Tim Duncan. Never said it was a retirement announcement. Never said it was I'm coming back. He just basically said, I'm hearing rumblings that we're going to hear something about Tim Duncan today. So a local newscaster went at him on Twitter and basically said, oh, you're hearing that? What are your sources? What it is, whatever. And of course, the guy from Basketball Insider doesn't even respond to him. But this newscaster does this every year, and he always goes after people. And so we knew that this announcement was going to happen on Friday. And basically what happened was, with the tragedy that happened in Dallas, we all kind of found out they're pushing it back a couple of days out of respect. Okay. Now, does that not sound like the Spurs to you?
Yes.
It totally does, right? Okay. So this newscaster goes back at the guy and saying like, oh, how did your sources work out today? And I'm like,
my God.
You do realize us all hearing that this is being moved a couple of days.
Maybe his sources didn't tell him about what happened.
Basically validated what the guy was saying earlier, and more than likely this is going to happen on Monday morning. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But it's the same thing every year. that this certain newscaster has to go in and just start attacking people. And there are some friends that I've actually made on social media that I will ask questions to and will actually give me information. And some of those people are people that he's attacked before. And I just find it funny because it's kind of the same thing all year long, all summer long. Is when it's free agency, he just likes to go and start attacking people. My whole thing is, if you're really upset because you don't feel that that's legit journalism, then why aren't you doing something to get the info first? That's just the way that I look at it.
I mean, some people like to watch the world burn, or they like to be gatekeepers of their own profession. When technically, if anyone can do it, if they go through the right means to do it correctly,
exactly.
And so I have no problems with that. But at the same time, that's how information gets passed down. I can't tell you how many times I saw that damn Facebook share that was like Tim Duncan's going to sign for his 19th year.
Oh, it was like a couple years ago.
Everybody kept posting that. No, it was from last year, and it's like, come on, do the math. It's his 20th season, and if you look at the date of that article, it's 2015. And I really wish people, I nailed you for it, but I really wish people would. Kind of vet these sources, or actually just look at the date.
Yeah.
And you got to understand.
And the funny thing about that one is that the problem I kind of feel that everybody kept sharing is because I think it was from Sports Nation. Yeah. So it's a credible website that you normally would be like, hey, they're not going to come up with any fake stuff. But again, like you said, Frank, nobody's looking at the date that
on
it
social
says there.
media. People just pay attention to the headline.
Right.
That's pretty much it. And half the time they won't even click on the article. But like me, I like to read things and say, where did this come from, and find out who said it, and going as far as even calling people. But the fact of the matter is like, if you just did that little bit of scrutiny, I mean, you would be far better than any site that you would see on Facebook.
What's a funny thing too is that, and you've talked about this before, right? Frank, that the people on TV, people on radio, they're going the way of the dinosaur. And these people are threatened.
It's very true. They're totally threatened.
They're threatened by new media. Right. So people like Twitter, people like Facebook, people like anything blog-wise, anything like that scares them. I mean, and it should. Newspaper, for instance, they get scared by stuff like this. You know what I mean? And so their only way is to either try to find a way around it, try to join the crowd, or attack it.
Attack
what
it.
It is.
Exactly.
And in this case, this guy's just going to attack it because he doesn't have a really outlet. But none of these guys take the actual the time in their mind to try to figure out a good way to make the new media work for them and try to integrate it into the newer sources. And they're too stuck in the past. And that's what happens. They're going to just get passed by, and they'll be a relic.
Yep. And in the meantime, Go Spurs, Go memes will still be going.
And podcast.
And the podcast. Anyways, that's basically it for our discussion on Tim Duncan. You're listening to Go Spurs, Go memes. We'll be back in a bit. And we're back. All right, guys, we're going to continue talking Spurs. Now it's time to talk about hashtag Summer Spurs. Spurs Summer League, defending Summer League champions. And they're not going to repeat this year.
They're
they
2-2. They suck at life right now. God, they're bad.
They lost. So they're out. They got one more game against. They lost to Timberwolves today. They play. I don't remember who they play. Look it up. I don't remember who they play. They play one more game on Friday, and then that's it. Thanks, Frank.
That's just great. That's your contribution for today, sir?
Anyways, positives about the Summer League team. DeJounte Murray, that kid just looks great. I said it when it happened, when we actually took him in the draft. I actually think he could be the steal of the draft. It was pretty awesome that he basically fell into slot number 29 for us to be able to get him. You having fun there, Frank? Frank's trying to eat a bunch of Ritz crackers right now.
No,
and he's just making a mess and a half. Anyways, DeJounte Murray, kid has been absolutely awesome. Kyle Anderson, man, he really stepped up his game. He looks fantastic. What else, buddy? What else have you thought was pretty awesome about Summer League?
Simmons is trying to pick up where he left off last year in the Summer League. He's trying to be aggressive, trying to pick up his driving game, trying to go left and right more consistently, trying to work on his three-pointer. He still sucks at that.
But my whole thing with Simmons is I like the kid. I think he has potential, but I never get too excited when I see him play in Summer League because in Summer League he usually looks really, really good. But then when he gets to the NBA, he kind of looks really bad. He has his moments where he looks pretty good, but I can see why he would be in a doghouse with Pop.
Yeah. He takes too many chances for one.
Way too many chances, and he can't do it all himself.
Yeah, and he's not as good as he thinks he is. That's
Right.
the thing.
Oh, yes, I
He's
totally
he's very limited defensive. No, he's better defensively than he is offensively. When he's on offensively, he's just sort of like in a nice little roll. But when he's bad offensively, he's
just really bad, and he starts making mistakes. He starts fouling, and then he starts doing turnovers.
Ironically enough, he was the leading scorer at 19 points in this game. But they shot atrociously in this game. They shot 38% in the game. They shot 25% for three. I mean, you're not going to win the game.
Yeah, and then I think the two big questions that everyone was asking about the summer league team is, where was Livio Jean-Charles and where was Davis Bertrands?
Jean-Charles
Bertrands. I know. I'm just saying, like everyone was asking because they hadn't been playing, especially when they were in Utah. They weren't there. So Bertrands was actually in Las Vegas, but his contract's not done yet. That's why he didn't play. Contract has to be signed. Livio Jean-Charles looks pretty good in the last couple of games that we saw. They're nothing really special.
He's still really raw.
Yeah, but that's the thing too. So I'm really curious about that because the rumor was that they would sign Charles and Bertans to the real roster. So I'm actually curious to see if that actually happens now. Now that we know how many spots we have open, Duncan has retired. Ginobili will probably sign his contract or at least come to an agreement on his contract by tomorrow. And I'm still not happy about that.
I'm not happy about that. You should have seen the gesture I just made.
Yeah. And so everything should kind of start falling in line. I'm assuming tomorrow on Thursday, we'll start hearing that Paul Gasol was officially signed. No one's signed yet. I'm assuming Gasol will sign tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised if Bertans also signs tomorrow. And then it'll be a kind of mixture of, okay, who else is going to sign and, what order are they going to be in?
So is there any surprises so far that you've seen so far? I've seen one so far that I've seen as a surprise. I still don't think he's going to do anything on the roster, but is there anybody that you've seen in surprise? I'll tell you after mine turn.
No, not really. There's not anybody that I've really been impressed with. I've only got to see one or two summer league games. I've been way too busy. But from what I've seen, I've just really been impressed with Kyle Anderson. I really feel like he's really stepped up his game. He looks fantastic. I'm really excited to see what he's going to bring us in year 3.
I was very happy with the Forbes guy, Brian Forbes.
Oh, yeah, Forbes. Yep.
I do like the way he shoots. I like his overall game. I like that he's very organized. Unfortunately, he's too small. And he'll
probably be D-League Austin, really,
And I'm sort of hoping that the Spurs develop this Oliver Hanlon guy, the guy we got for Dio.
Oh, yeah.
He's not too bad. He actually has some good driving skills. He's very long. I didn't realize how long the guy was. He's pretty long for a point guard. He's not bad. So I'd like to see them maybe develop him a little bit more, but not right now. I mean, he's not a right now solution at this point.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of questions, too, with what the Spurs' true roster is going to look like. Of course, they can have up to 20 camp invites right now. But by the time the season starts, it has to be dwindled down to 15. With Duncan out, I think the count that I have now is probably about 13 guys on the roster, and that includes the rumored Bertans addition and Livio Jean-Charles as well. It'd be interesting to see who else the Spurs pick up. That means we have about 2 other roster spots. I'm curious who else is going to be invited to camp. Last year we were kind of surprised with a couple of people that were added to camp, like Jimmer Fredette, that didn't make it, and we all got excited for nothing.
Yeah, that wasn't that a disappointment?
It really was a disappointment because I was really hoping he would fit well, and his defense was horrible. He just didn't seem to pick up the Spurs rotations and schemes and everything. He just didn't seem like he knew what he was doing. Anyways, as tradition here on the Go Spurs Go Memes podcast, every time a Spurs leaves, we do an honorary farewell gong. And of course, this past week we learned about 2 Spurs that would be leaving the franchise. The first one, of course, was Boban Marjanovic, who signed an amazing deal with the Detroit Pistons worth $21 million over 3 years. There's no way in hell the Spurs are going to match that.
Not in a million years.
It's not going to happen. We just don't have the cash for that. And then I believe his third-year opt-in, that's the scary part because I think he can get, I think it's like $10 million that year, something crazy like that on how his contract works out. But I think we wouldn't touch that contract with a 10-foot pole. And then, of course, the legend, Tim Duncan, the GOAT, he officially retired. So we're going to do our tradition here on Go Spurs Go Memes, our goodbye gongs, I guess we'll call them. Up first, Boban Marjanovic. Tim Duncan. That was a special one for Timmy right there. This is Go Spurs Go Memes. We'll be back in a bit.
In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world. And you will be launching the largest aerial battle in the history of mankind. Mankind, that word should have new meaning for all of us today. We can't be consumed by our petty differences anymore. We will be united in our common interest. Perhaps it's fate that today is the 4th of July. And you will once again be fighting freedom.
Yeah. I'm cutting him off.
He's killing me.
All right, so we're going to talk Independence Day Resurgence. You guys saw this last week, about 2 weeks ago, right?
I saw it 2 weeks ago.
Okay, 2 weeks ago, and I finally saw it this past weekend.
Did you spend money on it?
No, I didn't.
Oh. Why does that not surprise me?
No. And I'm glad I didn't because this movie was really, really bad. Like, I know you guys told me that this movie was like a really bad movie, but I was, you even said it's so
terrible.
bad, it's good. Still go watch it, go enjoy it or whatever. And so I saw it, and man, it's like they didn't even try. It's like they didn't even have a script. Like, they just basically ad-libbed the whole damn thing.
It's like they kept writing it as they were making it.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Like it was just so bad. And they tried to really recapture what happened 20 years ago, because if you've seen the original Independence Day, you've seen this one. Like, it's the exact same freaking movie, except this new one has a queen. Like, it has the queen bug.
They're a hive mind and controlled by a queen. That's why the original one, when they blew up the mothership, everything just apparently died and fell out of the sky. Even though at the end you still see fighters moving in and out and then fighting still. So
Right.
none of that makes sense. But then again, this is Independence
A lot of this
Day.
movie didn't make any sense. Like, it was really bad. Like, I just can't. I don't know what are the words to use to describe how bad this movie was.
What was the one thing that you hated the most about it? Not hated, just didn't like, because there's no hate here. And this is just like you just looked at it and you're like, oh my God. What is
Okay,
this?
I didn't feel that Bill Pullman's character needed to be in this entire film at all as the old president that was also linked to the aliens. Like, that whole thing, I think, was just a waste of space and waste of time. And I also kind of feel the same thing about, really, you have to do it like it's Will Smith's son that's the fighter pilot who is probably the worst actor ever.
And he's going to be put in the situation to save the world. Just coincidence by being his son.
Yeah, like, going back to the whole, like, oh, we were kids when this first happened and now we're adults and aliens, pew pew. Like, yeah, no.
Frank, what was the
It
worst
didn't
thing
work
for you?
for me.
The one thing I could not stand in this movie, and keep in mind, I enjoyed it. I mean, it was entertaining and everything. It's a terrible movie. I mean, it's a garbage fire. The one thing I could not stand about this film was the fact that no matter what you're training, you could fly any aircraft the manager.
True.
In fact,
doesn't matter.
Bill Pullman's character, the president, is, this is obviously when we do these, there's a ton of spoiler alerts. We don't care. Now, the funny thing about Bill Pullman's character, the president, is that he's not entirely lucid. He is just a guy on his last limb, just crazy. And his daughter, kind of gave up her shot of being like a prestigious pilot so that she can take care of him. And you're telling me he just gets on a plane gets on a vehicle that flies that he's never been in the cockpit, and he just gets in and he could fly it. Not only fly it, but fly it competently.
Right.
I mean, in every single aircraft, I guess they have a dumb button. Fly button and land button.
Okay, well, here's the thing. I actually think I figured this out because I remember you telling me this when you first kind of told me about the movie. So throughout the majority of this movie, the old president, Bill Pullman's character, he's older now, and he's like the crazy old man, so he has this huge beard. before he becomes pilot of any aircraft that could exist, Bill Pullman, he shaves the beard. So I think the beard was holding him back and actually made him insane.
The cane was holding him back too?
It was the whole thing. But if you notice, once he shaved the beard off, he didn't have the cane anymore, and he could pilot a plane. I think I solved the whole.
I'll tell you the one. I'll tell you the one thing that
It must be in the director's cut.
Exactly.
I'll tell you the one thing that drove me crazy. The one thing that drove me crazy is that somehow or another, the old man, Jeff Goldblum's father, survives that horrific, like
Yeah.
whatever. I was like, everybody in that city, that probably the whole eastern seaboard died except him.
Exactly.
And I was like, and then he just happened to be perfectly like just put on a little spot where he could just be picked up and put into a car.
And put in a situation to where it's the climax of the movie here. Without
course,
him,
right.
yeah, and of course his son is responsible for getting this huge plan out of the way to get this queen, and all the moving parts, all the main players in the previous one have a big part in the actual climax of defeating, the antagonist here,
Right.
including the offspring of the of the next one. So like they pass the torch, but there's no imagination behind that. It's like it really seems really lazy.
Yeah, and then I think I kind of felt there was two other lazy things about this entire film. One was the queen itself, because the queen basically reminded me of the queen from Alien, just with more tentacles. But it was just basically kind of like the same thing, except let's just make her big. You know,
Exactly.
like that was just basically the whole thing. So that whole brontosaurus thing you saw in the freaking trailers, that's the queen. And that whole scene there, where they finally defeat her or whatever, and she dies, it's just kind of anticlimactic because they're going to do it. Like there is no stress about it. There is no, they're going to defeat the queen. And then the second thing that I thought was pretty crappy is like how fast the movie ends after they defeat the queen. Like it's literally like they kill the queen, and then like in a minute the movie's over. Yeah. And they rush it because they have to
Ran out of money?
Well, not just that, but they also had to set up this third one by saying that no, we have the technology now, and now we can go and get them. The end.
I sort of thought that they made that up, but like they got to the end of this, like we really don't have a good climax to the story. You know what we can do? We can use this sphere. We could just say that we're going to go find them ourselves.
We're going to go find them ourselves.
Perfect.
But here's the thing that I'm really sad to admit. I want to watch the third one.
Yes.
And I hope they make it because honestly, the special effects are spectacular.
Oh, of course they are. Yeah.
The whole queen battle. She's huge. She's very, very menacing, and it just looks really, really nice. They make her huge. The sound effects
and I don't know
are
if we're
there.
going to get a third one because this movie bombed so
But
bad.
it did really well in China.
Oh, see, there you go.
But I really don't think I'd have to agree with you that they
I don't
make
think it
another
gets
one.
made. I just
But,
don't think they made enough money.
The end was just a pep rally, and for some reason you've got this big monster, just dead on the floor, and like the kids are somewhere in there. It's like you would be containing all this stuff
Exactly.
because there's probably unexploded ordnance, or you have no idea if she's even dead.
Exactly.
Now explain to me how when Bill Pullman, spoiler alert, he dies in this one. Thank goodness for everybody in the movie.
He becomes Randy Quaid, basically.
Yeah, and he dies in vain too because he doesn't really kill the queen. But like at the same time, it's like there's some point where she's like, oh, they have a shield, or she has her own personal shield which protected her from this blast that Pullman did, and so she goes after for some reason the yellow bus because she's angry.
Yes.
We have no idea. She's just going. Her priorities are really skewed at this point.
Yeah.
She's the leadership of this whole entire civilization that's above the planet, and she decides, what the hell, I'm just going to go after this yellow bus. Now, after that, what gets me is that, then you have all these planes flying, trying to get her, and for some reason, you just hear, her shield's down. Why? I have no idea.
Did she turn it off?
I don't know. They destroyed it or something like that. But then why did she have the shield in the first place? Shouldn't it have been destroyed at that blast?
Yeah, I don't know. But then here's another thing, too, is like, okay, so at the end of the movie, once they finally defeat the queen, these huge ships that have their own gravity that are over the earth now, they just start backing up and leaving.
They fly away.
But I'm like, wait a minute. If you're all connected to the queen and the queen's dead, shouldn't all that stuff have like gone bickety bam and crashed?
That's
I think they did explain
they
it.
did mention
that they get called back.
that they get callbacks. They did mention that part, but that didn't make any sense.
But except for the first one, for some reason.
Exactly.
Right. It made no sense to me. I was just like, so it goes back, and who's calling it back if the queen was here?
Well, they know because there's more of them.
Yeah, there's like they're all hive minds with. I guess there's a bigger queen that's maybe.
That's
three
why they
times
were
the
saying they
size.
were going to go look for him.
Or is there a king?
Maybe.
Oh, that's remarkably
see?
sexist.
Oh my God.
See?
So so there's two things that I liked about it. The one thing that I liked about it, I did like Brent Spiner's character, the guy who.
I see. I thought that was stupid. Like, really, you brought him back
I didn't
for no
care enough
reason?
for the characters to know their names.
No, Brent Spiner that's the guy's name, who's the actor.
No, I know, but he's saying like I don't even know what.
I don't even remember
know
what
what
his
the
name
character's name is. I don't know, Doctor Crazy
I don't
long-haired
even remember
guy.
what his name was. I liked him because I thought he was funny, kooky. You know, and that was one of the things I did like about it. I did like the way. I don't know why I like this, but I really like the way the gun sounded off of the jets. Something about the gun sounds. Was
I mean,
really
you're
cool.
talking about the
The
effects.
special effects
I mean,
were awesome.
I love
I mean,
it.
they
The
really
sound
were
was good.
great.
The effects,
Yeah.
I mean, that's where all the money went. You could tell, like, you put in your whole budget on the best shot that you have, and then
Frank,
you go back.
haven't you talked about this before? When you don't screen a movie for critics, right?
You know right away.
know right away.
You know it's bad.
Yeah.
didn't do
It's
it for this
true.
one.
It's true.
It's unfortunate because
All
I
right.
do want that closure on that sequel, and we're probably
never gonna get it.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Look for the graphic novel.
Yeah. Anyways, that brings us to the end of the Go Spurs Go Memes podcast. I believe this is podcast number 41? 42. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. As always, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, like us on Facebook. This podcast can be heard on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Music, and YouTube as well. We will talk to you guys next week. And as always, Go Spurs Go.
Are you angry?
Very.
Really?
Always.
What is that like? Because you know me, I'm just mellow all the time.